Welcome back. Time for this week's Capitol Report with Pat McGuigan of CapitolBeatOK.com. Pat, let's talk about pension reform. What is the status right now in the legislature of the pension reform issue?
There's a big argument going on, and I remember when I was a wee lad, and one of my first jobs was as a janitor, and I worked with an elderly African-American man, and he said, if your outgo exceeds your intake, it will be your downfall.
Yes.
And he was a child of the Depression years, so he was very careful in his approach to his personal finances. Well, the argument at the Capitol is between sustaining a defined benefit retirement system for our current state employees, most of them, or moving toward, for new hires, a defined contribution system. There's lots of arguments about the sustainability of defined benefits, whereas defined contribution, by definition, finances itself over time. One simple way to put this is the annual amortization cost, which is debt, for across our leading fund, is $823 million a year, all right? That's in the existing system, defined benefit. Under a defined contribution system, actuarial analysis that was financed by Oklahoma Council of Public Affairs but done independently found that after 19 years the system is paying for itself, the newly proposed system, and after 30 years you have over $3 billion in savings that is then available for other purposes, presumably even maybe including public employee pay increases. Part of this comes down to a little bit of confusion. It's like the argument between fully funded and debt-free. Fully funded is kind of a term of art, and it can mean 80% plus adequacy. Debt-free means debt-free. It means you're paying for it. And now, I respect the people who disagree with this analysis, but I'm very sympathetic to what Representative Randy McDaniel is trying to do, and he has a lot of support. I think it's going to happen. It'll be a big change going forward because the current system will be preserved for existing employees, and some employees are explicitly excluded from the reform, including the high hazard pay, law enforcement people. So stay tuned. Mobility for employees is an aspect of this that I think is important for young hires. Responsibility on the part of the government towards future retirees, and sustainability for the sake of the taxpayers. It's controversial, but I believe we're going to see some additional pension reforms this year.
All right, this is also controversial. The Senate Appropriations Committee passed House Bill 2642, which would take funding from the 8-year construction plan and give it to education. This is now headed to the Senate floor. What do you think of this?
It's a tough deal because, you know, these politicians, you can sort of understand if you have 25,000 people circling the building as they did last Monday, that kind of gets your attention. The problem is this might be a short-sighted approach, even though it's made by a couple of people I respect, Lee Denny and Jim Halligan in the legislature. When I say short-sighted, it took a long time for Oklahoma to get to the point where they made that grand compromise on transportation. And remember, it was a bipartisan compromise to guarantee a certain amount of funding so that in an achievable amount of time, you wiped out the bulk of the problems with these aging bridges, and you put enough money into infrastructure and roads and bridges to get them to at least manageable levels. And of course, you know, recent problems we've seen with a bridge that had supposedly been repaired and they're worse off than they were before shows that it's needed. I think it could have negative consequences on public safety, but it was probably an effective quick fix for the politicians, Democrats and Republicans. Is that the best thing in the public interest? Well, give it some time. We'll see what the final outcome is.
All right, I don't know if you want to say a quick word about Jeremiah Denton, one of the best-known POWs of the Vietnam War era, died last week. And
I was blessed. I was very fortunate to interview him many years ago as a young reporter, and it was an absolutely unforgettable experience. We talked about the torture he endured, and for some reason what sticks in my mind was his eyes being closed and his finger or fingers on his brow rubbing like that as he remembered the nightmarish treatment he received in North Vietnam. His book autobiography was aptly entitled When Hell Was in Session. I will never forget him. He meant a lot to me, and his death in this season for many Christians of Lent, kind of really touched me, because one of the things he told me was how deeply he related to the passion of Christ as an adult after his time in prison compared to his childhood, where the sweet images of the mother and child in the manger were the main drivers of his faith. He was a great American.
Well, you can read more about that and other topics at CapitolBeatOK.com. Pat McGuigan, I'm Alex Cameron. Have a great day.